Thank you, thank you, thank you. Welcome to another episode of Chase Jarvis Live. I'm Chase Jarvis. I'm a photographer and a director. I hope you out there in the internet audience are familiar with my work. About once or twice a month, I gather some really, really interesting friends to get together to talk about an interesting topic. People who are in the creative field, people who I think would be interesting to myself, to the folks here in the live studio audience, and especially you out there in the internet. And this show is called Chase Jarvis Live. And today we have some amazing, amazing guests that I'll get to in just a second. A big shout out, a big thank you to HP for helping me make the world a better place and making this show possible, along with Broncolor and B&H, who without all of this gear would not be possible. So much respect to you all. I got to give it, there's two contests that have been going on. One contest has been going on our site to give away an HP all-in-one photo printer. And that person, the winner of that is, who's that? At Jason_Roberts. He had a great, he'd been pimping the show before the show with the "Don't let your photo booty be done plundered by online pirates. Learn ye rights." And so with that creative tweet, you win an all-in-one HP printer. Email production@chasejarvis.com and we'll get you that printer. Thank you very much. And also the ASMP, get a load of this. They have been giving away, or for the past couple of days, they've had a contest going on to promote the show, a Fuji X Pro 1 camera and a 35mm 1.4 lens, which is another lovely prize, and that goes out to Jessica Perry. So rock on, Jessica Perry. Round of applause for those guys for promoting the show. Thank you. And with that, the Fuji camera was such a great giveaway that we are going to start, this is news to you folks out there, we're going to start another contest right now to give away another Fuji camera with a 1.4 35mm lens. Whew, that's a mouthful. And the way you win that during this show is by saying something. If you hear something you like on this show, quote that, add at ASMP, and then the short URL to this show. So help us promote the show. Win a camera you can tweet as many times as you like. And without further ado, on to today's show. Thank you very much. Today we have three amazing guests. The first of which, save your applause to the end if you would, the first of which is a man who's a close personal friend of mine, Oleg Gutsol. He's the CEO and founder of 500 Pixels, the fantabulous. It's the new Flickr. It's the photo sharing site. Thanks so much for joining us, buddy.
Thank you.
Also, the world-renowned, he's the fanciest lawyer, the most well-known one. He's the founder of Creative Commons. He's the Net's lawyer hero, I would say. Please allow me to welcome Professor Larry Lessig. And then, Larry, thank you very much for coming, man. Appreciate it. And the former president of the largest professional photographers organization in the world, ASMP. His name is Richard Kelly. Please join us, Richard. Round of applause for these three gentlemen. Thank you very much. Please. I got all kinds of water stashed behind here if you guys get thirsty. So, today's topic, as everyone in the audience knows, and as we've been talking about since dinner last night, is the internet and the future of photo sharing. How do we do it? How do we do it safely? How do we be mindful of our rights and make money and not sort of roll over? If we could just go around the horn and say maybe a little bit, I've sort of got a joke that the ASMP represents the copyright, the Creative Commons and Larry Lessig represents the copy left, and Mr. Gutsol here is the copy middle because he's sort of neutral little photo community builder. But if you could go around and tell us a little bit about what it is that, like yourself, your background, and maybe a little bit about ASMP and what they stand for.
Sure. ASMP is one of the oldest photo trade associations. We are about photographers' rights, and not just copyrights, but I think all of the rights that photographers want to be acknowledged for. And this is going back to the Life magazine era. So we have a long track record.
Awesome. Larry, tell us about Creative Commons. I know that, actually maybe you can go into a little bit of depth and explanation because Creative Commons might be new to some folks. I think we all know about copyright. Whether or not we know all the rules is one thing, but tell us a little bit about Creative Commons and what you've done.
Yeah, so I was one of the co-founders of Creative Commons just about 10 years ago. And the idea was to give creators a simple way to mark their creativity with the freedoms they intended to carry. So the default of copyright is all rights reserved. Creative Commons gives you a way of saying, well, here's some rights I'm giving away, and here are the rights that I'm reserving. And that was to make it easy for people to signal, to say, I want you to share my work, or I want you to build upon my work, or I want you to do things with my work that otherwise copyright would require you hiring a lawyer to to license up front. So it was about enabling creators to make that statement, and we've seen it take off an extraordinary range of places, from photography in the context of Flickr, to educators, to scientists, to filmmakers.
Got it. And how long have you guys been around?
So we'll have our 10th anniversary this December.
Lovely. Congratulations. Happy anniversary. I'll be there with cake and champagne. What about you, my friend? Tell the world about the background of 500px and where it's headed and what you do.
So I'm the co-founder of 500 Pixels, and we're the photo sharing community with a focus on the highest quality photography.
I like you say 500px is photography.
Yeah.
I like that. It's bold.
Yeah. And we've been doing it for over 3 years now. The idea of 500 pixels goes way beyond 3 years. It's probably about 10 years or so.
That's not very many pixels, because I got cameras that have millions of pixels. So where'd you get 500?
It was an interesting thing. We started in LiveJournal, if you remember that.
Oh yeah, way back.
Community.
Sure.
And our interest was in the highest quality of photography, and there were a few requirements. So your photos had to be good, and they had to be 500 pixels wide.
Got it.
At that time, the monitors were like this small.
For small,
Right,
so that's where the 500px came in.
Yeah.
Well, your site is definitely one of the most impressive photo sharing sites, communities on the web for sure. It basically completely destroys what Flickr has been for the previous generation, and now it's everyone I know who's doing good work is on 500px. So, well, thank you all, gentlemen. I appreciate you guys coming today. Now, one of the things that I'll kick this off with is a reminder that we're going to be taking questions at several times throughout the show. So if you folks out there in the internet world, you want to ask one of these fine gentlemen, or even yours truly, any question, regardless of what country you're in and what time zone. Thank you, those of you who are in Asia and Europe who are staying up late for the show. Feel free to ask it. We've got a team back there aggregating questions, and there'll be a couple of times throughout the course of the show to answer your questions. And the same folks with you here in the in-studio audience. We're going to be going to you guys a couple times throughout the show. If I say, are there any questions from the in-studio audience and no one raises their hand, I'm going to be bummed. So think of your questions now, especially you folks in the front row. Okay, so actually I want to start off with you, Larry. You did an amazing TED Talk, and the TED Talk I think is how creativity is being strangled by the law. And if I'm not mistaken, like, that is a very bold statement, and it says that there's this thing, creativity, and there's this thing, the law, and they don't get along very well, and we've got this sort of suffocation happening. So what made you say that? What's your stance about?
Yeah, so what I was trying to emphasize is the way that the net has encouraged a new kind of creator. You know, we've had extraordinary creators, professional creators, for all of the 20th century, but here, just in the birth of the 20th century, we've got an opportunity to be inspiring new kinds of creators. And those creators, especially remix artists and people who are trying to build and share upon other people's work, are finding themselves within an architecture of regulation that was designed for the analog world. It was designed for a completely different time. And a bunch of businesses, not creators typically, but businesses who are eager to enforce the rules of that regime, because it turns out to give them extraordinary powers to control the development or the future of this platform for creativity. So my view is, you know, we've got to have copyright as a central part of any productive culture, creative culture, but it's got to be updated to the technology of the era. And the technology of the digital age is radically different from the technology of the analog age. And we need thinking and progress to get it to a place where it's doing what it needs to do, which is, number one, making sure professionals get the return from their creativity they need. Number two, enabling amateurs or ordinary people to have the freedom to create and to share their creativity consistent with the objective of helping professionals. It needs to do those two things. Right. And for too long, copyright is just focused on one. What do you do about the professional?
Got it. Well, what do you think about the idea, Richard, that copyright just has historically focused on one, that's the professional, and what about this new era? Because I think if I'm going to ask a question, a survey question of the audience, we want to be able to share our stuff and not get burned. Right. So when we have this strict rule, a strict law like copyright, is it really for artists, or is it for industries, and is it too rigid?
Well, that's a very good question, and as I've analyzed both the law, the way it's written, and remember, it was written in 1976 to kind of,
was a good year.
To kind of bring us up to speed with TV and radio technology. Right. And it was really built for books and as Larry says, more of an analog world. Well, now we're 30 years away from that. It hasn't been really updated to the concerns that he's bringing to our attention.
Right.
And so the challenge is that I think the copyright industries, and I'm going to use publishers and music industries, are able to sort of use that and continue to use that. But most photographers, most of the visual arts community, you described Oleg as being in the center. I actually think we're the ones in the center between
the creators, yeah,
the copyright industries and let's say
internet for whatever.
Yeah, exactly. And so I feel like we are at a disadvantage because the law hasn't really been brought up to where we can use it effectively.
Well said. Well said. So just a quick show of hands from the audience. How many folks in the audience regularly take pictures and share them online somewhere? Show of hands. Actually, let's reverse this. Is there anyone who doesn't regularly take pictures and put them on the internet? Two. 2 out of 40 or 45. Okay, so to me, that is a great indicator that, and let me ask one other question. How many of you all register your copyrights with the Library of Congress before you share them? 2, all right, 2 hardcore. 1 who's been burned before, and so 2. So again, that's another signifier that the system is somewhat broken. So in order to sort of stoke this fire a little bit, if we can, I would like to play a little video. Some friends of ours over at fstoppers, I think it's a .com, fstoppers.com, made a great video about a gentleman who we flew in today to be a part of the show. He's in the front row right there. His name's Noam. And maybe if we can cut away to that video, it's about a 3-minute video that talks, it just gives a little story about something that's happened to him, and I bet you'll identify with it soon here.
It actually started in a weird way when one day my coworker came to me and she told me, I saw your picture on a shirt this morning in the subway. Why didn't you tell me you were selling your shirts? And I told her, I have no idea what you're talking about. After 6 months, I went with my friends to a clothing store in Soho, and it was a big surprise, but I just saw my face on a shirt. So I picked it up, and I was like, okay, so she was right. I had no idea it will be so big, and it just became huge without me knowing about it. I found the picture in about 30 or 40 countries around the world, and I'm pretty sure I'll find more, much more than that. I took this picture in 2006, and I posted 4 pictures out of the set on Flickr the same day. And I started getting a lot of views and a lot of comments on Flickr. So after about 6 months, I decided to go back to the same folder and see if I missed anything. I saw this one picture that I was like, okay, this is a good picture. I should post it. This was the picture that got so big around the world. One day I got an email from the editor of one of the magazines in Chile, and she told me, we used your picture in our magazine, and we wanted to thank you for the picture. She never asked me before she used it, but I guess she tried to be nice and, and show me what they did with it. And yeah, so this was the copy of the magazine. It was my first face publication, I guess. After being published in the Chile magazine and being on shirts, I got an email from National Geographic, and they told me they want to license my picture. Glimpse magazine is National Geographic magazine for politics and anything related to that. And they made this magazine for the presidential election in 2008. And they called it Power to the People, the Face of Democracy. This was actually my only paid gig with my picture.
Congratulations, bud. We're congratulating you for having a photograph stolen and having it go to 30 countries outside of your control, which I realize is a little bit strange. But the thing that's even stranger, it's a long video, and rather than going the whole video, we want to just cut it about the 3.5-minute mark and say that the punchline, if I'm not mistaken, is you actually said, you know what, at least the world is seeing my photograph. Otherwise, it would be locked up in my computer in my basement. So to me, that is a unique position, but I will give you that, and I think it needs some explanation.
It's impossible to go after all those people and sue them or ask for compensation. So I had to reinvent the way I deal with it. And I knew if I can't go after them, at least I need to use it in a way that will help me in the end. So maybe in the short term, it's not good for me. I'm not getting cash or, or the credit. But in the long term, I'm getting a lot of publicity. I get new clients from that. People see my work, which is something I couldn't do before people knew my story or my picture. And now my face is everywhere, and people know me in Egypt, and they know me in Spain, know me in Australia. Before that picture came, maybe 10 people knew me, and 9 of them are my family. So
Fantastic. Okay, so that, to me, that seems like your prime example of the paradox that we're all living in. We want to have our face known in Egypt. Ideally, there's a little bit more credit than was given. There's some financial, but for you, you'd rather have something than nothing. Anyone of you guys have something to say about that?
I think it's a perfect example, probably the best example of how images on the internet can kind of be, transmitted worldwide very quickly.
Very quickly.
And I actually use this story as an example in my copyright talks because there's a decision that has to be made. And we were talking about this before the show, and that is that a photographer or a visual artist who gets their work infringed, the most common reaction is an emotional one, and that is, oh my, somebody took something that belonged very close to me. And it can really stop future creativity because they get so hung up on that infringement that they can't move on. And I think what he's done is he's kind of embraced it in some way and tried to figure out, okay, I'm making lemonade out of lemons, and I'm going to make this work. And I encourage everyone to buy his T-shirt because at least he gets a little bit of money from the T-shirts he's selling.
You showed up and had him sign your T-shirt.
Exactly.
Right? I should have been buying that today. My bad.
But I think what's interesting about the example is it sort of highlights all the ways in which the system is failing. So one way the system is failing is there's no efficient way for artists to actually enforce their rights. I mean, this huge, cumbersome, complex copyright system still does not give the people it's supposed to benefit a simple, cheap way to enforce their rights, number one. Number two, many of the people who shared this image just thought they were supposed to be allowed to share this image. There was no clear assertion one way or the other because we're in an era where the internet seems to say share, but because the presumption is that's what it's going to enable, but actually some people are eager for you to share and some people are not eager for you to share. And the infrastructure doesn't give you a simple way to say that. Now that's what we were trying to add. We were trying to add a simple way for people to say, my business model is share this. Put my picture on the covers of 30 different magazines around the country. Right. Versus people who say, if you want to put this in your magazine, you got to talk to me first and get permission for me to do it.
The system that's in place now, the registration system. I can register. He could have registered his work, but there's no way for a person who wants to use it to actually track it down through that system. The copyright registration system is all about creating evidence, not necessarily how do I find somebody, which is the inherent problem that we've talked about in our circles about orphan works, where how do you take something, you don't know who created it, how do you find them? And until that's built, we're going to see a lot more of this, I think, happening.
Right.
I mean, copyright is supposed to be a property system. But it's the most inefficient property system ever invented by men because we can't even know who owns what. That's the whole purpose of a property system.
Right.
So what we've got to do is we need reform from the law to make it easier to identify the owners. But we also have to get more people in the industry and in the infrastructure to make it easier for people to identify who owns what and to give them simple ways to say, you know, this is what I want you to be able to do with my work, but if you need to contact me to get permissions beyond that, then here's where to contact.
Is it almost a lie? It's almost like a bluff. So if I see a C on there, and I'm on the internet, I'm on the other side of the world from someone's picture, and I see that, do I really feel like I'm about to get busted any minute now if I put that picture on a blog or on a T-shirt? And I think the answer is no, and that's part of the problem with copyright is it seems so far above the people's heads. It's like it's for the rich, it's for the corporations to defend their stuff, and it's not for the artists, and that's one of the problems that I have with copyright. For part of my workflow, so if I'm representing the artist on the panel today, I spent thousands of dollars and countless hours registering every image as a part of my workflow for years. In one case, it paid off because a company, a publicly traded company, used more than 100 of my images out of license, and we had to go to court, and I defended my position and won. And you guys can look that up. It's just Chase Jarvis v. K2. It was the largest copyright infringement case, and the most numbers at that time. There's since been some that were larger. But I want to share my work, and because I was in a position to actually have lawyers and take on a publicly traded company, it's very, very different than 90% of the creatives out there. So is copyright just gone? Is it sailed by because it's just out of reach of the common artist?
Well, you know, there are two different audiences to think about. So the ordinary person, you know, the kid using the internet, sees the C on there and in the main just ignores it. But if you step one level above, if you think about institutions, for example, schools, that have lawyers that advise the school boards or advise the superintendents, they're obsessively concerned about observing the rules. So on the one hand, you have kids who basically do whatever the hell they want. On the other hand, you have these lawyers basically telling schools, you can't teach your kids how to remix a video, or you can't teach your kids how to put together a collection of images from the internet because we don't know what the copyright status of any of this is going to be, and we face extraordinary liability. So the kids look at this, they look at their teachers, they look at the system, and they think, this is insane. This system is just insane. And the consequence of that is that the public support for copyright as a system begins to collapse. So there's a growing abolitionist movement out there that says we should just abolish copyright. It's a stupid system, we should get rid of it. I think that movement's mistaken, but I understand why it grows, because to most people it just seems like a completely backward system of regulation that does nothing for the artist and only stuff for big companies.
Got it. We're going to go to the phones in not too long here, looking for questions at #CJLive, and you all in the audience get your questions prepared. I'm going to go to you in just a second, because one of the things I want to do before is, so that's the birth right, or the birth reason of Creative Commons, is it not? Because you see this sort of failing abolitionist, you say, no, we don't want to abolish. We want to allow people to share what they want to share and reserve what they want to reserve.
Right. And we want to recruit more people into that conversation. So for example, Chase, you have tons of images that you're totally okay with people sharing. But you don't tell them that, right? You just let the ambiguity out there, and then you pick and choose among those who share your images which people are going to have to be punished and which people are going to have to be praised, right? And so I guess I'd say to you, you know, you're a leader here, and you ought to be in the business of helping.
Can we escort this man off the show, please?
but the thing is that you don't even have to put the C there anymore. The law covers you without the notice.
Understood.
So the world, you know, if nobody's acting on it, if nobody's policing it, then everybody's just infringing all the time.
Right. It's a free-for-all.
Right. So I think that his idea of if you intend to share, and I think this is where I agree with Creative Commons, is I like the idea of the artist deciding the intention. Yeah. What do I allow you to do?
I think that's the best position, and I learned something through this conversation that Larry and I had last night about the same thing. Like, why aren't you taking a stand? And my stand to date, you know, I'm ready to indict myself as well, has been sort of, well, I do want to reserve my rights. My people share my photos anyway, you know, in across the social channels, so I don't need to actually do extra work to let them know. But I realize now, after our conversation, that I'm sort of doing a disservice. Now, a cross-section of my work, I can't do whole sites, for example. A cross-section of my work is, others have rights to it. I have the rights to display it. If I shoot an ad campaign for Apple or Pepsi or something, then that I can't let other people do that, so I have to maintain those rights. Those have to have a C on them. But I agree that a lot of the stuff that behind-the-scenes stuff that I do, that should definitely be Creative Commons. One of the things you just said, Larry, was that you're looking to help other people understand and sort of spread the Creative Commons movement. That's where you come in, because were you not, like, as far as I know, 500px is not a Creative Commons compatible platform. Why, and what are you going to do about it?
So not yet.
Not yet.
But we're considering the license. More and more people are interested in it. So we go where our users are asking us to go. We're listening to them, and you know, if that's something that, if it becomes apparent that we need to have the license, we will have it. So at the moment, we're thinking.
Good, good.
But I want to go back to the earlier conversation. I think there's a technological problem with sharing, and that problem is we cannot track the source. So everybody's doing it, and and you know, photographers usually don't mind, you know, just people sharing, and they would probably want that. But there's no way to attribute the original author when you're the one resharing somebody reshared before you. So I guess that's what happened with Noam and his photograph. Most people have no idea where it came from.
Right. At least someone did the service of calling you to tell you they stole your shit. So that was funny. But I think that's a good point. And I know part of the job of my blog is to highlight other great work. It's, you know, part of it is about what it is that we're doing here, about the live show, behind the scenes shoots and whatnot. But a lot of it is curation of, he's an emerging artist, I think is great. Here's this problem in photography. And we make every effort to attribute. And sometimes through hours of work can't actually find the source. And what we've ended up doing is just not using that, because I don't want to sort of put that foot forward. I try and always attribute. So I sympathize with the technological problem, but that's, I think, not too far from being solved. Is anybody working on this problem?
Well, the big challenge is that, you know, you have metadata that can be added to images and films and music that can be used to go back to the originator. But many of the social networks that we all use strip that data out.
Got it.
So until I think there's an agreement among those parties that this is important, and that I think last night at dinner, Larry suggested we have to demand it. We have to go in and say, your users want this connection and the linkages. And I think if we can do that, that's one step in the right direction, at least in terms of the attribution, which I think we all acknowledge is the very baseline of what
Attribution as
exactly.
the baseline.
Absolutely.
Okay, so, and I'll agree with you, Larry. I think if I'm, you know, the irony of my personal position is I feel very caught in the middle, because I want to stand for professionals' rights and my peers, my own and my peers' ability to make money. But I would say a huge portion of my personal success has come, I was sharing stuff 10 years before it was cool to share it. In part, I was vilified for sharing that, and now the world has become a different place, and that's in part how I'm able to do what it is that I do. So I guess this is sort of a commitment to you that while a certain chunk of my work I can actually put the CC on there, I'm going to really start moving that. And I've been a huge advocate for a long time, but so this is a little moment here. Important. This is a moment. And if you do too, like I'm a huge fan. I've been friends with Larry for a number of years, and to be able to continue to support it would mean a lot, I think, to the photo community. Because being intentional as an artist and saying, this is how I want you to consider my work, I think that's probably the most important element, right? Is not just being a cork in the tide.
Yeah, and we need, I mean, I'm a 500 pixels member, and when I see an image, I would love to be able to have a simple way to know I'm allowed to put that in one of my presentations, or I'm allowed to share this in a certain way. But there are a lot of other entities we got to push as well. You know, so for example, you go to a Google image search page.
This is funny.
And you know, there are 20 dimensions down the left side of the screen about how you can filter the images. You can filter on whether it's a line drawing or whether it's clip art, whether it's large or small, whether it's certain hue, whether it's you know, all these sorts of dimensions, but the dimension reuse, free to reuse, is not there, right? So if you send a kid out to do a project on the internet, gather images, he or she has no simple way to know what he or she's allowed to do consistent with the law. And that encourages, I think, this attitude, which is, you know, just go ahead and take it, whatever, take it.
I was just going to say, you can take that one step further. And what if on that same Google search page, there was the option to buy? All of a sudden now you're connecting the ability to go from a non-commercial to a commercial use, whether it's a small use or whether it's a large commercial use. I think the primary research tool for photo buyers today is Google.
Yeah.
So if they're using it, why aren't we able to sell there? Why aren't we able to do that?
That's what we're doing.
Yes. So, Oleg, you're a solution to the problem.
Yeah, that's exactly the problem we're trying to address. I believe that the more exposure you get, the better you will be. And again, you will benefit directly or indirectly. Probably you will benefit indirectly. But if you can benefit directly, in a case of somebody wanting to use it for a presentation project or any other way, you know, you should be able to do it. You should be able to provide an easier means to buy. You know, the less friction we have to buy and the more friction we have to steal, you know, you can take a look at the iTunes and what it did to the music industry.
Exactly right.
Yeah, the music industry is a great example of that. And that's one of the things that I like about what you're doing at 500 Pixels is you're able to transact with some people. If I love an image, you can buy a canvas, you can buy a print of what it is that you like.
Yeah, but what I think is interesting.
It's not the full step, but that's a partial
No,
step.
it's just the beginning.
Okay.
But we'll get there.
Yeah, but I think what's interesting is that there are creators who have this complicated set of attitudes. So my wife is a photographer, as well as a lawyer. Some years she's made more money as a photographer than as a lawyer.
Wait, say that again. Some years she's made more as a photographer than as a lawyer.
Yeah.
You're a lawyer in the front row there.
So, but you know, her attitude is she wants to release her work in a way that certain people know they can just use it for free, like educators, or you know, you want to share it with your friends. You want to, but if somebody's going to use it in a commercial context, you know, her attitude is she shouldn't be competing with commercial photographers. Like, you want to do a commercial work, go out and hire a photographer to do that work for you, or come talk to me about paying me for the image you want to use. You know, so it's two kind of markets that are existing in parallel with each other. And what we need is a system that makes it easier for creators to sort of move between the two.
I think it's also worth mentioning the copyright law isn't just for professionals. It covers everybody.
Everyone, yeah.
It's just that the professional traditionally has been the one who's used it to their benefit.
Yeah, is willing to litigate, knows, has a lawyer, and understands that they have the keys to the kingdom if they register their rights, register their image with copyright. Right. But still, these keys are expensive and hard to come by, and frankly, that's my main problem with them. We're going to go to the phones here. I'd love a question coming up on the hashtag CJLive for any of you folks out there on the internet who are looking to ask a question of these fine folks here, and I'll look for that up on my screen here. Until then, let's get a mic to someone's hands in the audience here who's got a question. I know there's one. Yes, ma'am, you in the middle back with the red hair. Lovely red hair.
Considering the system that we have today, working with what we have today, do we as artists have a responsibility to mark our work, to one, let people know what we want to do with it, whether it's copyrighted, and two, provide information so that they could come back and find us?
I think the answer is yes. I was going to have a long sort of BS answer, but I think the answer is straight up yes. And that's sort of what I was confessing, is I haven't, because I'm trying to both advocate and be a person who leads the charge to make sure that we can still make a living from our work, yet I'm, you know, as a very early advocate of sharing, I think that I'm actually contributing to the confusion by not taking a lead and saying that this image here, anyone can use it for non-commercial use, but if you want to make some money off something that you're doing and you want to use it, let me know and we'll work something out. So the only way to do that is to make it known what my intentions are and give some sort of contact. Now, my contact would probably just be a Google search, but there's probably something from, I don't know, is there another way of tracking that? Or is that goes back to the question we were raised earlier about the technology is not really there, that infrastructure. So is it just reliant on a Google search at this point?
Well, you know, what's interesting, if you look at what Google did in the context of music and video, you know, the YouTube created a huge problem for them with copyright, lots of people coming in and suing them, and they developed technologies and encouraged these technologies to be able to take basically a fingerprint of music and a fingerprint of video so that they can actually see when stuff is uploaded, right, whether it's the sort of thing somebody has claimed ownership to. I think we're going to see the same technology developing in the context of images, you know, let's hope, so that you don't have to worry so much about whether the metadata is in there. You've got a system for identifying this image has been, you know, registered and is in the system, and we know there's an owner out there who claims rights to it, and that owner is happy for you to share it for non-commercial purposes, but, you know, if you want to do something commercial, you got to get back to them.
Great. We're going to go back to the audience in just a second. In the meantime, I got a question coming in from abroad about what about foreign law? You guys are talking about U.S. law. Now, this isn't actually, I think, one of the things that it's a little bit tricky when I put this panel together in collaboration with the ASMP, which is a great organization. If you're a photographer, you're not a member, you should go check out asmp.org. But I didn't want it to be about the law. So I don't think it's about the law. I think it's about popular culture.
Yeah.
So to the folks out there in Europe or Asia who are listening, or even, you know, South America, for example, that what we're talking about is an internet trend and not a legal thing. Because I think your country, or, you know, wherever you are in the world, has some means for dealing with this. If you're in China, it's a little fuzzier. But what I'm trying to make this is a discussion about what people want, because we have people here. I mean, we've got Vic Perlman in the front row. Maybe we can get a good shot of Vic there. Wave your hand, Vic. Vic regularly goes and talks to the Copyright Office, and if he's an advocate and he's listening to photographers and finding out what it is that we want him to represent on our behalf or on behalf of the ASMP, that's how we're going to you know, assert some change. So it's not a legal discussion that we're having here. It's a philosophical discussion about what artists want and what societies and cultures consume. Another question in the audience. Oh, actually, yeah, maybe a clarifying point from. Oh, we got a mic issue. I'll repeat the question, Vic. What's the?
It's not really a question, but before we get too far from the point that the young lady made about a responsibility, in dealing with the anti-copyright forces, I believe you cover very, very powerful local groups that would like to do away with or totally minimize copyright.
Sure.
One of the points that they consistently make is that if the creators don't care enough to do everything they can to protect their works, why should the law give them that protection?
Got it.
There are arguments analogous to eminent domain or to...
Got it. Well, let's not get too legal. Let me just paraphrase what you're saying here, because you're trying to make my head spin, and I know about this stuff. And the point that Vic raised is if the artists aren't being proactive and taking care of their responsibility to identify their work and say what they want done with it, where, you know, the government's saying, well, the people aren't even doing it. Did I characterize that correctly, you think? Like, to me, I think that's a very, very fair statement.
Well, one of the things we did at ASMP when I was president was we created an initiative called Registration Counts. And on one hand, it was to teach artists how to register.
Okay.
Because most artists don't do that.
And we will refrain from talking all kinds of shit about how terrible that system is, because it's terrible.
Okay, we will refrain.
Okay.
But the idea was not just to help the artist, but also to be able to, for Victor, when Victor goes to the Copyright Office or to Congress, to be able to say, look, we are making the effort. We are doing our part. Now make it better for us. So there were two motives to that idea.
Got it.
I think I have a product ideas now coming.
Yeah.
I mean, there's definitely a need to simplify the registration process and to be able to easily track the source and the original creator. So I've talked to a few groups that are working on addressing this problem. One of them is pushing a new format, an image format, to be used online. That's very difficult.
Yeah,
so I don't know if
that's... You gotta get broad adoption before you have success.
You need to have broad adoption from the major players. But I'm sure there are other solutions that can be explored at least.
Well, Larry had an idea last night.
Yeah, no, what we've got to do.
Segue for you.
What we got to do is, I mean, one of the problems with, when a company comes up with the idea is a lot of people say, well, are you developing this registry and system so that eventually you get to own everything, right? And there's a lot of mistrust inside the system. So, but if we brought people into a system voluntarily, where we actually gave them, cheaper, a simpler way to register, compliant with the Copyright Office requirement, and actually a better infrastructure for enforcement. Imagine a better sort of arbitration system than the extremely inefficient way that we enforce rights right now. Right. You could actually have people opting into a more effective way to enforce their rights and also to be confident about the freedoms to share.
I love that. Now, if you're just tuning in, I'm Chase Jarvis. We're here at Chase Jarvis Live. To my right, I've got Richard Kelly, the former president of the ASMP, one of the largest professional photographers associations in the world. Professor Lawrence Lessig, who is the founder, co-founder of Creative Commons, which is the organization that's spreading like wildfire about trying to give folks a better way to share their work and reserve some rights. And Oleg here from 500 Pixels, one of the, I'd say, the net's premier photo sharing community where we can find some of the best photography. We're taking questions at #CJLive, and also we are giving away a camera, a Fuji X Pro 1. If you hear something that's worth retweeting here, retweet that plus @ASMP and the short URL to this show. We're going to be giving that away in 20 minutes, so please spread the word. I'll give you a quote right now. Creative Commons is probably the future. What does the ASMP think about Creative Commons? I know we've got Vic, who's the general counsel for the ASMP in the front row. But just, is there a future where you guys could sort of blend models?
Well, I hesitate to say that I speak for ASMP in that regard.
Good move.
I've been accused of being somewhat of a progressive in this area, and I'm going to wear that hat. I think a few moments ago we just saw Larry go to the copyright side of things, so maybe I'll kind of go to the copy left. And that is that one of the things I was impressed about with Creative Commons was the simplicity. They have icons, they have licensing that's built on top of copyright. It's very legal. We stress licensing as professionals, so I think that it's a continuation of that. I have been working with Creative Commons for a few years now, trying to come up with some areas where we can find common ground, the professionals and the people who want to share. Because I believe that as we move forward, the line that separates a professional from the amateur is going to be very, very...
It's already very blurry.
If it's, yeah, exactly.
Which I think is cool. A lot of people are very upset within the organizations about that, but sorry.
No, so I just think that there are some areas that we can work together on. I love the idea last night of maybe, I mean, it's funny, the two things that ASMP has been working on recently, the idea of a sort of a small claims or an alternative dispute resolution with the copyright situation. And then secondly, a way to register your works more simply. And it was funny that those are Creative Commons two ideas too. So we obviously have some things we can work together on, and I think I think we should.
I'm going to lock you two in a room. You guys, we're going to go out to lunch.
We're going to embrace later. Yeah.
So I think there's an interesting topic that segues out of that rather nicely. It sort of relates to what it is that you're doing, but I think it's going to be very intuitive for the folks in the audience, both in the internet and the live studio audience, and that is social photo sharing sites. So let's talk about Facebook. Let's talk about Tumblr. Let's talk about Pinterest. Some of these sites that are just absolutely, Twitter, are phenomenal at getting the word out about your photos. Have you ever had a photo go viral and get 1,000+ ones on Google Plus or likes on Facebook? For those of you who have, it's quite a rush. There's a lot of sort of cultural currency that comes about. One of the things that I personally found very interesting is I have some rather high-up friends in each of those organizations, and some of them were invited to participate in the discussion today. And at first, there's a lot of enthusiasm. And then I think they went away and they talked to their corporate counsel, and they said, no, like, so I had a lot of, sort of like, oh, yeah, sorry, yeah, can't make it, I got to do my laundry. And I don't blame those organizations. I wish they were here on the couch with us, but I'm a huge fan, and I think if I'm going to put words in their mouth, they're probably just sitting this one out, because I think maybe the way they think of themselves is as a vehicle and they don't want to get messed up in the law. And they try and say that we're just, they put a copyright notice on there. We respect copyright. Don't do it. But yet they make that it's completely frictionless for you to just go cut, paste, zing, foo, out to 1 million people or 100,000 or 10 friends. Talk to me about that.
Well, I think, you know, at ASMP, we actually hired an attorney to read all of the terms of service because
I can't read them.
Yeah, as Oleg and I were talking earlier, it's very, very confusing. Most people just click through.
Right.
And so
anybody out there read the TOC for Facebook?
No, dude.
The attorney in the front row raised his hand. Anybody else read the TOC for Tumblr or Pinterest or Google Plus or show of hands for the camera? That is a dramatic show of hands.
Yeah.
Okay,
so we hired an attorney to analyze these and to give us a best practices. It's available on asmp.org, social media best practices. And really what it comes down to is don't put anything out there you don't want shared. Right. And that's only because we haven't figured out how to do all these other things we're talking about.
Yeah, and it's not clear that a lot of these platforms are eager to encourage people to say whether they want it shared or not. Because, you know, the reality is if you're Facebook and there's ambiguity, but you got all the rights because your terms of service basically say you have this worldwide non-exclusive right, you've got more power than you would have if instead you enabled people to say, yeah, and this can be shared elsewhere too. So you can take this and put this on somebody else's network, or you can do something else with it. So we don't see the platforms racing to a world to empower, where they can empower artists to actually say, because it's against their interest. And I think it's early in the stage of development. You know, it's 500 pixels, it's Flickr, where they can think more, I think, fairly about to what extent are we in the business of helping creators, or to what extent are we in the business of helping ourselves? And you know, Flickr early on made a very strong commitment to making it simple for people to say, share this or don't share this. And you know, that's what we're trying to encourage more people to do inside of the platforms.
Great. We're going to take a few questions from the audience. There was a bunch of questions on my monitor here from the Twitter. It was going like crazy while you guys are getting the cameras over there. I'm going to take one from RMC the Shooter, at RMC the Shooter. Why should the onus be on me to bend over backwards to copyright my work? Why is the possession of the original file not enough? And I'm going to try and take that one. It actually is enough. You have your rights just by putting them out there. You don't actually have to write the C. The idea is, however, in order to have a successful suit, you're more empowered if you have registered the image. So that gives you a certain set of keys to the kingdom. It gives you damages in a way that the other way does not. But you don't have to do anything. I think our point is if you put that C on there, or in Larry's case, you put the CC on there, Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial, which is is that the most standard? Yeah, it's like 10 to 1 or something, right? Most people, 70%. Most people want attribution, and they don't, like, go ahead and use my thing, but just say that it came from me. And that's a cultural currency. So RMC the Shooter, you're covered, but it gives you a different sense of how far you're going to be able to go with your suit. So question here in the front row from Sean.
Not really a question, but we talked about last night. Basically, go off what you said. I think points to the problem with...
Oh, wait, we got to give you a mic. Sorry about that.
No problem. We talked about this a little bit last night. The problem with the current system in relation to his question is that even if you go through that process of registration, there's a current case, we talked about it last night a little bit, or cases that were just recently thrown out, where textbook publishers had basically routinely violated the licenses they'd received from photographers. There were several suits filed, and they're basically all dismissed on technicality with the registration process.
Got it.
Now, meanwhile, the other conversation we had last night is the kid from Boston University who wasn't profiting from the music he downloaded, but was whacked by the music industry for
$675 grand. Did you guys hear about that? This kid from Boston used $675 grand just for downloading, not distributing, right?
No, he was distributing.
He was
massively.
Oh, he was?
I think that's why.
But not commercially.
But not commercially.
Oh, of course not. No.
Not commercially. Okay.
But so anyway, so that's my point in terms of I think
who's the system built for?
Right. It's built for corporate interests, and I think that all of our friends, in the copyright
right.
like to trot us out, the individual artists, and say, hey, this is who we're protecting, the little guy, when in reality, at the same time they're trotting us out to do that, they're having their lawyers draft completely onerous contracts that, completely devalue the copyright that we have.
Corporations shape up. We got some more. I think we got another couple questions in the back row there. Is that right?
I do it.
Actually, let's go here. We've already heard from Vic. Let's go right here just for a second. Yeah, sir, go ahead. I think that should be on. Everything should be hunky-dory. Talk at us. Let us know what you want to say. You have the mic in your hand, sir? Go ahead.
Hi, Mr. Lessig. I'm Brian Livingston. As I'm sure you know, the U.S. copyright law doesn't give owners complete control over their work. The law lets individuals excerpt from works and comment on copyrighted works and parody them. So I wonder how you see in this new kind of notification system, individuals will be notified this is copyrighted, but you still have some ability to excerpt and comment and parody this work.
Yeah, I mean, you know, the legal system is filled with all sorts of fiction and lies, right? So you pick up a book and you read on the first page, this book copyrighted by so-and-so. No part of this book may be reproduced at all without written permission of the copyright owner. And that's a complete lie, because you're right. The law gives you fair use rights. You can quote parts of it, you can comment on parts of it, you can remix parts of it, you can critique parts of it, because that freedom is built into our copyright law. And I think it should be. I think it's consistent. Supreme Court has said that's a First Amendment freedom of speech right that's built in, that limits the scope of copyright law. So everything we do in the context of Creative Commons presupposes fair use rights. We don't try to modify or even specify fair use rights. We're fair use rights plus. So we're saying, you've got rights because of fair use, that's important, but beyond the fair use rights, what else can you do? So fair use wouldn't give you the right to non-commercially share full copies of works, but every single Creative Commons license that we have gives you the non-commercial right, the right to non-commercially share any work. So that's beyond the rights of fair use, and that's why, you know, this is the need for something like Creative Commons.
Another question from the audience, please. That's awesome. Yes, right here in the front row, sir. I believe you're from South Africa.
I am.
We touched base just before the show.
I would like to know, when I think about copyright, the first thing that I think about is music and what happened in the music industry. While music theft or piracy is still a big problem, it did lead to sort of an evolution in the music industry where the power isn't with the record labels anymore, but you see like thousands of independent artists rising up. So my question is, where do you see the photography industry going as a result of this copyright issues?
That's great. I see it migrating. That's why I said the sort of the soundbite that maybe Creative Commons is the future, because we have to have something that works a little bit. And I think folks like Oleg and others like him are trying to find a way to basically do what iTunes did for music at an artist level and make those plug-and-play systems. I know the folks at Shopify are doing a good job. The folks at 500 Pixels, there's a handful of sites that are attempting to do this. And I think it might actually be, it's going to be slightly more painful, or maybe we're in the most pain right now, and that it will get better, because you can't have a law from 1976 pre-internet that's actually governing what it is that we're doing right now.
I think we're in the infancy
of this.
And I think as curation sites, like I think of 500 Pixels as sort of like a self-curation site. Mm-hmm. As these mature, and as some of the things that Larry and I are going to work on in the back room kind of come to fruition, mm-hmm.
Maybe this marketplace that you're talking about will actually allow artists to make money from their creation.
Yeah, and I think it emphasizes the point that Sean was making before. You know, when the music industry thing happened, the copyright right people were out there saying, this is the end of music as we know it. This internet's going to destroy everything. We have to have things like the SOPA and the PIPA law. We have to have radical enforcement to stop all this file sharing. But in fact, what we saw as things like iTunes developed and alternatives developed is that there was a rise in a different kind of commercial music. There was many more artists who were making money from their music than it was in the old days. There weren't as many that were making money the way Britney Spears did, you know, like huge amounts of money. That's fallen. But is that a bad thing, to have a world where you have more artists who can actually profit from their creativity and maybe fewer who can be super billionaires because of their creativity? And I kind of think that's the same thing that we're going to see in all of these fields. We'll have technology is developing to encourage a wider range, a more democratized kind of commercial, non-commercial creativity, and that's the sort of thing we should be encouraging.
I think we shouldn't fight the technological advances that we now enjoy. We should utilize them. We should see how we can employ those things that are changing the way music works, or photos, or video, or whatever. And we should find a way to use it to our advantage. And I think you're absolutely right about the music industry and how that changed and allowed the indie bands to get popular and make money. Otherwise, they would never make anything.
I think what's going to fall. I talk about this with my staff and with people in side conversations on a couple of stages. That I feel like sort of the soft middle is eroding from the industry. There are going to be the Britney Spears. There's still going to be the photographers, the painters, the folks who can just command insane amounts of money. But for by and large, it's just going to be the folks sort of below there, and then the bottom, instead of being really thin, is going to be pretty cushy.
Yeah.
And cushy not as in these people are going to get super rich, but you're going to have a much larger cross-section of the population who can actually make a living or make a side living or add $1,000 a month to their income or something. And artists, like at the core of my being, I'm an artist and I want to see other artists succeed. And that's one of the reasons that I don't hate this movement. I actually like this movement, and I'm on record saying it for the last 10 years, that more creatives being able to make money and be successful. Let's keep the success out of the private jet realm, but down to the you can have a home, a retirement account, some insurance, and make a nice living. That's where it's all going. There's all kinds of questions flying in right now. There was one that I wanted to address before we wrap up. We've just got a couple minutes left. The question was about watermarks. Do you think that watermarks aid in spreading your name? And a watermark, in case you don't know, there's a couple different kinds. One of them is your name at the corner. It's like basically something over the top of the image. If you put a big googly woogly in the middle of the image, I don't think that actually helps much. I think that just makes people say, oh, I'm not going to retouch that, delete. But if you do want to share your work and you do embed your name in the JPEG, as subtly in the bottom, with like at www.ChaseJarvis.com or whatever, that can be effective. Any comments on that before we wrap it up?
We talk about watermarks at ASMP. I encourage people who are using social media platforms to consider one, but I'm not a huge fan of the big copyright across the picture. I think a little bug, that's the little thing you see on the side of a network TV is a little nicer.
Yeah.
And I consult a lot with wedding photographers or senior portrait photographers, and I tell them that if they're not in the social media realm and they're not using some sort of branding device, that they're missing out.
Absolutely. Socials, you got to put your work where the people are, and the people are on Facebook, on Twitter, on Google+, on these social networks, Pinterest, Tumblr. Like that's where images get moving around. Instagram, for example. Phew.
Nice.
Anybody came here and expecting to hear something they didn't hear today? They want a chance to say their piece now? Because otherwise you're going to have to do it at lunch with this group privately, because we're going to take you all out to lunch if you didn't know that. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Chase Jarvis. I got a giveaway now, that Fuji X Pro 1 that you all have been retweeting like crazy to try and win with @ASMP and a link to this show. Thank you very much. That thing goes to @N8, as in Nate Smith. It is a bad world where we can have more people profit from, is it a bad world where we can have more people profit from their creativity? Congratulations, Nate Smith. You won the Fuji X Pro 1 and the 1.4 35mm. Thank you very much for supporting the show. Send an email to production@ChaseJarvis.com. We will handsomely reward you for your work today. Huge thanks to all of you gentlemen. Huge thanks to the ASMP, again, asmp.org for photographers' rights, information about how you can get more involved or learn more about what it is that we're talking about today. CreativeCommons.org, is that right?
That's right.
500px.com for, I think, the best photo sharing community out there, the highest quality work. You will be blown away. I want to have a huge shout out to the folks at HP for helping me make the world a more creative place. Braun Color and Hasselblad Braun Imaging, and B&H. Big love to you guys as well. And then last but not least, I've got a a really cool thing going on right next door. You guys all out there in the world are familiar with Creative Live. Sue Bryce, the amazing photographer from New Zealand, has got a glamour workshop going on right now. It's live, and if you tune over straight from leaving this show, you will not be disappointed. creativelive.com/live. Go check it out. Thanks very much. Tell your friends you saw it here first. Big round of applause. Thank you, Soaks. Congratulations. All right. Gentlemen, thank you. Appreciate it.